My daughter publicly disrespected me, and so did I on her birthday. So, last week, my wife and 2 kids went to the zoo for my daughter's 23rd birthday. We were having a great time. While leaving an enclosure, some woman sort of cut us off and pushed in front of us to get out first. She didn't touch us, and it wasn't that big a deal, but it was a little obnoxious, and I said, "There's no need to push ahead, love." She responded with something like, "How did I push ahead? It's not like there's a queue." I just tutted and thought, whatever, not worth it. But then there was some giant guy, her son. I didn't realize this because they looked very different. She was white and he was mixed, not that it matters. She asked her, "What, does someone have a problem, Mum?" and pointed me out. Her son then turned around and started aggressively antagonizing me for no reason, telling me to keep my comments to myself, calling me a bitch and a Karen. And he kept calling me tiny, saying I had little man syndrome. It's just off-the-wall stuff, for what I thought was a benign comment. Then, for some reason, my daughter, 22F, felt the need to take up for this guy and started saying stuff like, "Why are you like this? Why do you feel the need to say something?" And then started apologizing to the guy and agreed with him that I'm a Karen. This took me aback. Then the guy asks how old she is, and she tells him, and he asks for her number, and she gives it to him. He hands his phone over to her, and she types in her number. This guy is staring at me with a shit-eating grin. When my daughter comes back to us, I ask her what the hell was that, and she just says, "What? He's cute, and you need to be put in your place every once in a while." I said since that's what she thinks, she can buy her car for her birthday. She thought I wasn't serious. When she asked if we could look at cars, I told her she could look at herself, because I was still not paying. This has divided my house, with my son taking my side, saying she was out of line, and my wife saying it's not worth ruining my relationship with her. If not getting her a car as punishment is enough to ruin her relationship with me, I probably spoiled her too much anyway. She already has a car that I bought her 2 years ago, which works fine, so it's not like I'm precisely depriving her. Aita, I'm at work on my lunch break, so I can't reply. I have skimmed the comments and will address some relevant things. The car I bought her 2 years ago was a second-hand, runaround Fiat 500. It is in fine shape, but not exactly the most excellent vehicle. I promised my daughter an Audi, as my son is traveling for his 21st birthday, which I am paying for. The car she wanted was roughly the exact cost. She doesn't live at home. She has yet to since she moved out for uni at 18. I don't feel like a Karen, but I'm not shy to speak up, complain if I think I must. If people are rude or something is not up to my standard, I will happily say something. I realistically couldn't beat up the 6FT4 or whatever 20-something-year-old mouthing off to me. I am 47 years old, have worked an office job for the last 20, 30 years, and have a bad back. 1K comments. Commentor. Why would you buy her another car when you bought her one 2 years ago? Jesus Christ. You made the entitled brat bed. I guess you can lay in it. Wife and daughter are the a-holes here, not you. OP. The first car was a little runaround Fiat. It works fine but could be a lot better. She wanted an Audi, which I said I would get her, as I am paying for her brother to travel on his 21st, and that's roughly the exact cost. Commentor. Are you sure it's not because she gave her number to a black man? Why even mention his race unless you have a problem with it? OP. To make a point that I had no way of knowing the woman I complained to was related to him. I am outspoken but not an idiot, and I have some sense of self-preservation. I wouldn't put myself or my family in danger by mouthing off to some giant guy, whether he was white, black, Chinese, Indian, etc. Update 1. The 24th of January, 2024. So I got home about an hour ago, and my wife called me into the room to talk. She gave me an ultimatum. She said I could either swallow my pride and buy my daughter the car, or she would buy the car out of her own money. My wife doesn't earn as much as me, but she still has a well-paying job and can afford it. She said that everyone is sick of my attitude in public, that every time we go out, I get in some sort of altercation or disagreement with someone over some petty shit. This is a gross over-exaggeration, but my wife showed me texts from my daughter asking if she can go out with just my wife, because I always do something to embarrass everyone. My wife refused and defended me, saying that's not true. And that's why when I got into that argument, my wife said nothing about my daughter's actions. She said she would punish my daughter because I could never keep my mouth shut, especially when my daughter said she didn't want me there because something like this would happen. And she defended me only to be made to look like a fool. She says that my daughter barely likes me as it is, and if I do this, I shouldn't be shocked when she stops talking to me altogether. I asked my wife if all I am to my daughter is a piggy bank, and she told me to stop playing the victim. She said it's up to me what I do with my money, but my daughter will be getting the car one way or another. So I can either make her hate me for no reason, or I can swallow my pride and get her the car myself. I don't know where to go from here. Update 2. The 25th of January 2024. Sorry, I didn't respond. A lot happened yesterday. After everything, I called my daughter because I wanted to discuss everything. My wife said just to let it go, but clearly, everyone had a problem with me that I didn't know about, so I wanted to get to the bottom of it. So I waited for my son to get home, and my daughter drove around a little later. We all sat down and decided to talk. I started by doing what many of you suggested and asking for examples rather than just accepting their word. And honestly, a lot of it sounded ridiculous. The fact that I sent back a steak twice, because both times it was undercooked, as if it's a crime to want a pound 180 steak cooked correctly. The fact that I argued with someone who sat in our assigned seats at a cinema, even though it was nearly empty. Again, as if it's a crime to want to sit in the chair I paid for when there are dozens of other places for these people to sit. And other equally silly things which I can't be bothered to get into and don't even really remember as a result of the insignificance of it. Despite thinking it was all ridiculous, I said I would do my best to be a meek pushover in public if that was the only way to get them to like me. And that I would get the car on one condition: that my daughter hadn't texted the guy who abused me. I asked to look at her messages, and she said not even to bother because she had texted him, and I didn't have the right to control who she talked to. Because she had texted him, and I didn't have the right to control who she spoke to. I said that is true, but I have the right to spend my money on whatever I want, and I'm not getting my daughter a car. She has one that works fine, and even if I am an ass, in a situation where her family is getting threatened, she sided with the aggressor and then doubled down on that. And that is unforgivable. My daughter blew up at me and said that I am a petty little pig-headed man with a Napoleon complex, and that all the money in the world hasn't stopped me from being a fucking loser. I said, "Oh yeah, because the guy who screams at old men is such a winner." And she screamed at me that I'm not a victim, and then something about how cathartic it was to watch someone stand up to me, and that how the second he did, she watched me shrink back into the little bitch I'd always been growing up. That was the last straw. I told her to get out. But she doubled down and said to me that my wife had told them about me being bullied growing up, and that was why I am the way I am. I saw my wife turn pale as a ghost at this comment. This is something I confided in her in private. That is why my daughter stopped respecting me. I wasn't cool enough for her or whatever. I was speechless, but my daughter carried on. She said, "Make a genuine promise to Jake that he can still go to Cambodia and ask him what he thinks." I just nodded. Her brother begged not to be put in the middle of this, but I insisted. He said, "Sometimes you can be a bit much, Dad." My daughter called him a pussy and just walked out. My son ran to his room, and my wife drove off after my daughter. She didn't come back last night. I've been waiting to hear from my wife or daughter since. I've called out of work. My son left for university without saying a word to me. I've barely slept a wink. I can't believe it. I'm a cliché. A wealthy, older man whose family hates him. If I was lost before, I'm genuinely trying to figure out what to do. Comments. Commentor. See a therapist. You may have underlying issues here, but your family isn't innocent. Get a therapist to weigh in on this. Your wife betrayed your trust, and your daughter is a 23-year-old entitled child that you are responsible for. Go to therapy, make it a family therapist, and get actual help. Our OP. I don't believe in therapy. I didn't need it, so I don't need it now. I don't need to pay some random person pound 200 an hour to tell me it's wrong to stand up for myself. Commentor. Everything about this update still reads like YTA. They give you examples and you ridicule them. When everyone but you sees a situation a certain way, the problem is you, not everyone else. You exhibit major toxic masculinity vibes, and I'm sorry, but 47 isn't old. Get over yourself, get help. You're a cliche because you're a jerk. They dislike you for a reason. OP, if I go to a flat earth convention and say the world is round, does that magically make me wrong? Or am I just in a room full of idiots? Story 2. My wife is addicted to the gym, and it's ruining our marriage. My wife is 30 years old, and she's always worked out and been in shape. But lately, I feel like it's becoming excessive. She used to work out at a gym in college regularly. At some point, she stopped going to the gym, I think lately, just due to her schedule, and preferred to work out at home or run outside. About 18 months ago, she announced she would get back into the habit of going to the gym. She now has a job where she makes more time for it. It started when he could be expected, but slowly became more and more frequent. She signed up for classes on the weekend, both days, and she started going to the gym every day. Then, it became the morning before work and then again, later in the evening, every single day. If she's stressed, she goes to the gym. Experience some sort of life crisis. She immediately heads to the gym. We argue, run to the gym. She's 4 months pregnant right now. I'm kind of surprised we even had time to make a kid. I understand that it's safe for her to work out, especially since she was already in the habit of doing it before she got pregnant, but the intensity is not slowing down. If she misses one of her regular gym sessions, she becomes so irritable, like a junkie not getting her fix. It's just bizarre. It's truly a case of too much of a good thing. Of course, she gets upset when I say that I feel it's becoming an unhealthy obsession, and that I miss spending time with her because she's there so much. She has all of these friends and this whole circle of people there that she prefers spending time with over me. Why don't we work out together at the gym? The gym is her time, she says. This isn't a case of me feeling insecure because she's in great physical shape and I'm a fat slob. I work out and I'm in shape. My job requires me to stay in shape, so I can't let myself go if I want to. I genuinely feel her gym habits are unhealthy. She's over-exercising for one. There is such a thing. But worse than that, I think it's becoming a way for her to escape everything else. She never actually fixed anything that goes wrong in her life. She just runs off to the gym to get a mood boost, and that's it. She also never gets anything else done, practically because how can she when she's at the gym so often? It's to the point where I have to do every chore, and if food is getting made, I will have to do it. I don't expect her to do all those things, but it should at least be a shared effort. People we know have even commented about it to me. They've said things about how she seems different, how she sure is at the gym a lot, and many of her friends and family barely see her anymore. Some have even suggested she's having an affair with somebody there. Please tell me that this doesn't sound normal to you. She insists this is perfectly normal. Story 3. I'm going on a date with a guy in a wheelchair. Please help. I'm 20M, and a couple of weeks ago, I was on Grindr and got a message from a guy, 22M. I looked at his profile and saw that he was a wheelchair user. I didn't ask him about it immediately, but we talked about anything for most of that night, like music, favorite sports, and things. I felt comfortable with him straight away, and it was never awkward. He then mentioned he was a wheelchair user. In case I didn't read his bio, he has that problem a lot. He explained that he was in an accident when he was 16, and he struggles to walk without holding onto something, so he uses his wheelchair mainly. He can also use a walking frame, but he works to use one of his hands, making it complicated. He said he understood if I didn't want to talk to him after, but I did. We have spoken every day since, and I asked him out on a date for Saturday. We'll get lunch, and then just hang out for the rest of the day, as neither of us has any plans. I'm nervous, and I don't want to make him uncomfortable in any way. He's perfect looking and seems like a nice guy. Other guys have yet to give him a chance, and I want to be the one to change that. Update. 2 days later. I wanted to let you know that many of you were asking for an update, so here it is. Read my previous post for context. We went on the date today, and it went great. I arrived first and waited outside as we'd planned, and then, not long after, he came. And he was even more handsome than the photos. I held the door open for him, and told him to ask if he needed any help, but I didn't force it. We ordered food and talked about everything. It didn't feel awkward. He's a nice and funny guy. After we finished our food, we went for a walk, and he asked if I was having a good time. I said I was, and he seemed so happy and told me he was too. It was the first date he'd ever been on. And he told me that he was nervous that I ghosted him, because most guys did that after agreeing to meet him. He asked if we could go for coffee because he didn't want the date to end, and I decided he was charming and put his hand out so I could hold it, and he told me I made him feel like a regular guy. Then, after talking for a while, we both had to leave. He asked if he could kiss me, and I said sure, but forgot to bend down. Luckily, he found it funny. I thought he was only going to kiss me on the cheek, but it was a proper kiss on the lips, and he's a fantastic kisser, and he made me blush, which was kind of embarrassing. I want another date.